Good afternoon. Here we are again. You enjoying my black country accent? You've been hearing a lot of it. So now we're going to talk about crisis prevention. It's really important, as we've already heard, really, that we can talk a lot about upstream prevention. It's really important, but not everybody can be prevented from being in crisis. So when people are in crisis, what can we do? And we're going to hear from a couple of speakers, and then we're going to have a panel discussion. So first of all, I'm going to introduce you to Mick Clarke and Jenny Travassos, Chief Exec and Director of Strategy at The Passage. And then after that, we're going to hear from Cristiana Merendeiro, who's a psychologist and coordinator from the CRESCER Housing First Service in Lisbon. I'm not sure how well I said CRESCER, but I did my best. Start?
Right.
Thanks, guys.
I'll swap. All right, y'all, we got the graveyard shift. I'm really short, unlike Michelle. So hi, hope you can hear me. So I'm Jenny Travassos. I'm from The Passage. I'm the doer of lots of things there. So that's us. We don't need to tell you again. So what we're here to talk about is No Night Out. So the three things we're going to cover is the intervention and model, the cultural shift for an organization, and the outcomes that we achieved. And I'm very lucky to have the two people who run No Night Out here. High five, guys. Okay, so No Night Out. It sounds really simple, because it kind of is. So it's really simple, but it requires a lot of skills building for an organization. So what does it do? So we run accommodation services, but we also have a resource center, in other parlance, a day center. And when people rock up to us, no history of rough sleeping, we don't know them, my colleague's team will sit down and go, what's happened? How have you come into us today? And that person will probably say, I'm going to sleep rough tonight. I don't know what to do to get help. And traditionally in our sector, we kind of make people jump through lots of hoops, kind of go, well, where was your last settled base? What are your needs? Do you have support needs? What are the risks? All of these things. And actually, our teams do it with dignity, and we do it with urgency. And I think that's the really important thing that I want to get across on this. It's really rapid, so we act with urgency and transparency and dignity. We do triage and rapid rehousing. Again, sounds quite simple, but not a lot of people do it. And it's informed by evidence. So they rock up, teams will assess them. They'll say, I'm going to sleep rough tonight. And what do? We put them in a B&B, and it goes straight to private rented sector. The average length of stay is, they're going to stare at me if I'm wrong, about 10 days, give or take. And it's that quick, because what we don't want is for them to be brought into homelessness services if they don't need it. I think the other things to highlight before I hand over to my wonderful chief exec is that we're really flexible, and the how we do this is what matters. But we do work to targets. So going back to Sir Michael Barber, who is an absolute hero of mine because I'm a total nerd, you need to work to targets so the teams and our organization know what we're working towards, and they have it. You know, it's an incentive, isn't it? The other thing that we found with No Night Out is having multiple funders enables us to be really agile. Only about a third of it is statutory funding. We have two other sort of major funders, but allows us to be quite agile and go, actually, this group's presenting a bit more. What do we need to do? And it, you know, going back to the colleague from Manchester, it's sort of outcomes-based. It's the between here and here, we're going to do everything we can. But actually the outcome is you're not coming into homelessness services and you have a place to call home that night. Sounds quite simple, but really, really powerful and different for the people we work with. And the final bit that I just want to highlight is that it's built on relationships. We cannot do any of this, not just without our funders, but relationships with the B&B owners. I mean, they invite us to dinner. They're absolutely wonderful humans. The landlord groups that we work with, our corporate partners who develop resettlement packs so people aren't going into an empty home. And the final most important bit for us as an organization is being formed by, the work that we do being informed by people with lived experience. So the stuff that we hand out and we share with the people who rock up that day about what to expect for this service, but also that there's not a council flat in Westminster at the end of the rainbow, because there isn't. There's not enough houses. So it's about being really realistic. And the people with lived experience helped us to shape that message, to do it with much dignity as possible, because sometimes there's not a lot of choice for the people we work with, and it's helping them to realise this is a step away from homelessness for them. I'm going to hand over to Mick.
Thanks, Jenny. You're wondering why there's a snow globe. All will be revealed. Just want to talk a little bit about the shift in culture. So looking at that shift in culture to taking a prevention-led and evidence-led approach, we passionately believe that we need to move and reframe homelessness away from viewing it as something that you simply manage after it's happened to something that you prevent from happening in the first place. And for us, there were four key elements to that cultural shift. The first was seizing the moment. And when we were coming out of COVID-19, it felt a bit like the snow globe. Everything was changing, everything was in flux. And we thought we could either be very passive and watch where these pieces land randomly, or we could try and influence, we could try and shape them, try and move them to where we felt we wanted them to be, and to create a new model, which became No Night Out. The second was about bringing people with us on this journey. And we were very clear that we wanted to take very much a ground-up approach. So working with people on the front line delivering the service, but also, as Jenny mentioned, people with lived experience who are using our services, all the way through to actually eventually our board of trustees and formulating our new strategy. The third key aspect was about measuring impact and using evidence, not least just because it's really important that people delivering services on the front line can see what they're achieving, but also very much in terms of being able to use the evidence to get further funding. When we first piloted No Night Out, we had no money to do it. But being able to use the data and the evidence to be able to show that this was working and was making a difference really enabled diverse funders to come on board, and it's something that we really wish government would do more of. You know, really look at taking an evidence-led approach and invest in what works. And of course, it enables us to be fleet of foot, to adapt the model to a cohort that is presenting. And then finally, it was a willingness to take risks, and as we like to call it, to leave your ego at the door. If we never tried anything new because we thought it might fail, then we'd never change anything. So having that willingness to take some risk is so important. It's one of the things I love about the voluntary sector, that we're less bureaucratic. And the ego point is very much struck, I guess, and summed up by Katrina earlier, that actually it's not about you. It's about the people who are presenting in front of you, and recognizing that that would be you or I, but for a different circumstance. And for us, it's really focusing on how we actually ensure that we move people away from needing agency to actually having agency. We genuinely believe that homelessness is a societal issue that requires a societal solution, and everyone has a role to play in that. And ours at The Passage is about being change makers. It's about leaving the ego at the door, and it's about never ever forgetting that we're not dealing with numbers, we're dealing with people. I'm going to hand back to Jenny.
But since you asked, what are the numbers? I know it's where everybody's head's at now because it's the end of the day. So what did it do? So as Mick said, we started with no money. We started with an idea and let's sort of take a punt and see if it works. So since we started, I'm not going to read them to you, but 415 people were supported through this process. And my colleagues, because data doesn't link up, my colleagues have to do manual data matching. That takes about a day. But only 5 of those individuals who've gone through the service have been spotted rough sleeping in London. I mean, that's powerful, and it works. That demonstrates that urgency and transparency and dignity in service provision has an impact on people's lives. And the final thing I want to say, as Mick highlighted it, is learning from evidence and data. every quarter, my colleagues go through the data, they data match, they crunch the numbers. But actually what we can see is public policy and practice every quarter. So someone mentioned the Home Office earlier. And interestingly, you can see the impact of Home Office decisions, which nationality they're focusing on who's rocking up to our doors. And each quarter, the colleagues who are delivering this pivot every quarter based on what they've learned, whether it's cultural needs, whether it's community needs, whatever it is, they learn and they pivot. And for us, that's sort of doing everything that we say on the tin as an organization in practice. And I will leave it there.
So, hello everyone. First, I would like to thank the Center for Homeless Impact for the opportunity to be here today and to present to all of you CRESCER's work. I will share some practical examples of approaches we are developing in Lisbon right now to break this cycle and prevent chronic homelessness. Some starting points. In all our projects, we begin from the recognition that people are not unfit. It is the existing responses that often fail to meet their needs. We also believe that people know what is best for them, so the first step in developing any response and any effective response is therefore to create spaces for their participation. And peer workers in this line are essential, and at CRESCER, about 30% of our staff have this lived experience and are peer workers. I will now present three key responses that we are developing at the moment: employability projects, our housing units, and I will finish with our Housing First project. So we start our social businesses in 2019 to promote the social inclusion to people experiencing homelessness through employment. And we developed this model where, after selecting trainees, CRESCER, in partnership with other entities, provides a 1-month theoretical and practical training program for people. This is followed by a 5-month on-the-job learning period, then either a professional internship or the direct integration in the labor market. Throughout this entire process, trainees also receive psychological and social support. And at the end, about 50% of people who complete the on-the-job training successfully are entering the job market. On-the-job training could take place in several places. One of them are our open door restaurant that you can see in the photos. Also our catering service is another place where on-the-job training can take place. And to finish, these 2 canteens that we have located inside large company offices. This one, sorry. Since 2024, so passing through our housing units now, since 2024, CRESCER has been running 2 housing units, each with 15 to 28 beds in a mix of single and shared rooms. These units support 2 groups, so people experiencing homelessness who are employed or in vocational training, the first one, and the second one, people who are experiencing homelessness for the first time and for less than a month. So this latest housing unit that is called this Prevention and Autonomy is a pilot in Portugal. We are testing it now, and its main goal is this idea of divergence. So to stop the early stages of potentially homelessness cycle before it begins. In this housing unit, so this Prevention and Autonomy unit, each referral is carefully evaluated. So if a person has a history of homelessness that is longer than 1 month, we will refer and redirect the person to other support services. We have observed that the total number of referrals is low, possible because one idea is that services are unaware of the referral system, is one hypothesis, and the second one is normally because people spend months in unstable conditions, and by the time they are referred, their homeless usually exceeds 1 month, so we need to think about this, but this is a pilot project, so we will have the time to do it. And the current occupancy rate of this project is 70%, so most residents are transgender or migrants, and we are now facing some people that become homelessness due to eviction, and this is showing us what we already know, the multiple factors that contribute to homelessness. For the 2 housing units, during the 6-month project, participants' funds are safeguarded to help them save. And at the end, this full amount is returned as this lump sum to support them to move to independent housing. For example, to use in a deposit, in a first month rent, or furniture, utilities, what they need. Case management also provides support, and we include here financial literacy training and also housing navigation services. Currently, for the employment unit, about 75% of participants reach autonomy. So we are happy with these results. Results for this newer unity of prevention in autonomy are not yet available for me to present to you. To finish, I will conclude with our Housing First program, which is built in these following principles of independent, time unlimited, scattered housing. So these are principles for the original methodology that you use it in our Housing First. And housing is always paired with this off-site support from a specialized team and also these community-based services. There are no preconditions whatsoever to join the program, so we integrate everyone who needs. The only screen that we ensure that is made is that the most vulnerable people are prioritized. Complexity here, and we know this as a team, complexity will be the rule and not the exception. Since its implementation, that was in February 2013, the project has scaled up from 7 to 152 houses, that is, we have at the moment, evolving at this point 3 cities and the Social Security Institute. It has been supporting more than 170 people who had experienced an average of 14 years in homelessness. But the most important result I want to highlight here is that 90% of the participants of the program did not return for their previous situation. And to conclude, I will introduce you to Francisco. I think his words will speak louder than any statistic. And it will show the real impact of this program in someone's life. Oh, sorry. I hope to do it, but...
É outra vida completamente diferente. Já ando mais tranquilo, já não há aquela preocupação de ser agredido, e já tenho possibilidades de abrir uma porta para eu dormir. Já não olho para o chão, olho em frente ou para cima. Antigamente andava sempre de cabeça baixa, ou com medo, ou... É completamente diferente.
Thank you so much for listening.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks very much to our speakers. And I wanted to also introduce you to Sharon Collins from Shared Ventures Limited, Director, and Richard Harries, Director of Caritas Westminster. And you'll hear a bit more about what those organisations do as we move through the questions, hopefully. So thanks, everybody. So what we're talking about today is how can we intervene to stop a crisis leading to long-term homelessness, which is a form of prevention in itself, to prevent that crisis from really embedding itself. So I suppose, Sharon, starting with you, your work, I know, is in the criminal justice system, and we know the interrelationship between, criminal justice contact and homelessness. Can you tell us a bit about the work that you do in the housing pathway to help people leaving prison to prevent the homelessness?
Thank you very much, Michelle. So myself and my colleague Patrick Fowler, who's in the audience today, we work as independent system conveners in that sort of muddy middle space between statutory agencies, voluntary, charity, third sector organisations, and we use a home as a lens to health and well-being. So we create, by being sort of multilingual, I think we speak health, we speak justice, we speak social care, a number of different languages. We create a movement and a personal and organisational agency for change to unlock complex, common but system-wide problems. So some of the work that we've done with the health and justice system around the housing pathway is, I think, illustrative of some of the challenges that we've seen today. The short answer is the pathway from prison for people who would otherwise be homeless is challenging and often re-traumatizing. Too many people are leaving into homelessness, and they describe it, when we've worked alongside them, they describe it as a second sentence around stigma and discrimination. And the pathway itself, and I know we've not really delved into the pathway a huge amount today, but the pathway itself is commissioned and delivered across 6 statutory organisations. So the police have a role, probation, prison, the court, health and housing. They all have a role, but no one owns it. There's no accountability for how well that pathway works. And when we've mapped the pathway from the point of arrest to release, and for some people, sadly, reoffending and back into the system, there are 7 core transition points. So 7 opportunities to prevent homelessness that are missed. And the pathway differs. So if you're held on remand, you have a different level of commission service and support than you do if you're sentenced. But there's absolutely nothing in place within prison or courts for people who are immediately released. So people can be held on remand for something like 6 to 12 months, waiting for their court date, be found not guilty or time served and released with no further support. So lots of structural and system barriers prevalent. We've touched on data many times today, but there's huge amounts of issues around the data. And I think, one of the most fundamental things is that the prison measure of homelessness doesn't align to the statutory local authority duty. So there's a real mismatch. So no wonder partners are overwhelmed and lack the capacity to respond in a timely way. Just to give you a sense of scale, in Winchester Prison, so that's a men's prison, it has a capacity for around 690 people at any one time. And over the course of a year, there's around 3,500 men transition through that pathway. But that represents just 40% of the caseload for probation in the South Central area. A further 60% are returning to the area from being placed in prisons out of area. So overall, just for that one prison, there's just something like 8,750 men transitioning through that pathway. and the reoffending rate's at 68%. And you can just see the scale of the challenge. And I just want to touch on gendered issues, because homelessness is unique for everyone, and their experience is unique. But women navigate it differently from men, and we've heard and we touched on issues around domestic abuse. But women make up a very small proportion of the prison population, about 4%. They serve really short sentences, typically less than 12 months, and with the early release scheme, that it often means that they only serve around 5 months, and that's enough time to destabilise families, lose children, lose relationships, lose their tenancy. And so there was a great point earlier around the generic sort of response, scaled response. And the generic nature of the prison pathway means that it's designed for scale, so more focused on men than it is for women. So it's challenging.
It is, and I'm sure it's something that people recognise very much in working in the homelessness system, that issue, and just how frustrating it is to try and get people the help they need when they're leaving prison.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. Richard, I don't know which question to ask you, just because we're a bit short of time. I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk maybe in the theme of that sort of cross-sector working and the importance of everybody working together, about cross-governmental working. I know, as well as being director of Caritas Westminster, that you've worked in several central government departments, I think. So if you don't mind me skipping past the faith organisations question, how can we do this better? How in the cross-government space, cross-sector space, can we work better together, not just for prisoners or for women or people with multiple disadvantage, but we've heard about it so much today that is a problem. Siloed working, lack of working with the whole person. What was it like when you were in government? Why doesn't it happen?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And if anyone wants to know about the work of Caritas Westminster or other Christian charities in this field, please come and talk to me afterwards. There's a lot we could talk about on that, and not just on homelessness, but on things like human trafficking, modern slavery, and so on. But yes, I have done the hard yards in government, which was given away by my question earlier to Katrina. When I joined the government, Margaret Thatcher was still Prime Minister. Right. I went through John Major, I went through Tony Blair, I went through Gordon Brown, I got as far as David Cameron before I gave up. I was quite proud of the fact I'd served 5 Prime Ministers. Of course, you really can just do that now in about a couple of years.
That long.
Yeah, yeah.
2 months.
And this question about stronger cross-departmental working, it's run like the message in a stick of rock all the way through those years. You know, it's quite interesting that a lot of the New Labour group were very complimentary about what John Major tried to do with the Citizens' Charter. If people remember the Citizens' Charter. But it was an attempt at sort of saying, no, we have to place the person we're here to support at the centre of everything we do, and then build services around it. And I don't know, it's really difficult. I mean, the Cabinet Office, back in 2000, produced an excellent report. It's still on the internet. I'd really recommend it, called Wiring It Up by the Performance and Innovation Unit. Then, 10 years ago, the Institute for Government produced another one called Joining Up Public Services Around Local Citizen Needs. They're identical documents, basically, and they're all really, really sensible. Everybody agrees it should happen, but for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. And I'll come on to that in a second. But the short answer, I suspect, is power. And it's really that simple. Every politician I've worked for in all those different political administrations, with 1 or 2 exceptions, have been honourable, decent people who are trying to do the best they possibly can. But they absolutely want to do their things. And if it means not doing somebody else's, they will put that to one side. And since time is short, I'm going to use somebody else's words. I'm going to go to a European writer who wrote this, and forgive me, I'm just going to quote it verbatim, but then I'll stop. There's an infinite number of good things which we all agree are highly desirable as well as possible, but of which we cannot hope to achieve more than a few within our lifetime, or which we can hope to achieve only but very imperfectly. It's a frustration of their ambitions in their own field which makes specialists revolt against the existing order. We find it difficult to bear to see things left undone, which everybody must admit are both desirable and possible. That these things cannot all be done at the same time, that any one of them can only be achieved at the sacrifice of others, can be seen only by taking into account factors which fall outside any specialism, which can be appreciated only by painful intellectual effort, the more painful as it forces us to see against a wider background the objects to which most of our labours are directed, and to balance them against others which lie outside our immediate interest, and for which, for that reason, we care less. And I think there's so much truth in that, because if I could just go a little bit of Christianity at the end, channeling what Katrina would said, the best Christian response is see the whole person and respond to the whole person, and don't segment it and don't think it that way. And that's really what I'd like to see more of. It won't solve government, unfortunately.
Thanks, Richard. Interesting. And not just see the whole person, but love the whole person, which I thought was the most powerful thing she said. Yeah. I'm going to come back to you last, Mick, if that's all right. Just to carry on this theme. Christiana, how well are sectors like health, justice, child protection, housing, mental health, how well are they joined up in Portugal? Do you recognise this difficulty that we're talking about?
I think it's, yeah. Yeah, as Enrique was explaining to us, we have this national strategy. So this national strategy has an integrated vision, and it recognized the need to bring together all the stakeholders from social, health, justice, housing, but also the voices of people with lived experience, so put us together on the same table, and this led that to these local partnerships with municipalities, also develop these groups with meetings where we are all together discussing problems, very local problems. So I think we have this integrated vision. It's we can see it, for example, in Housing First, other parts, other sector that is childcare. When we have a mother with the children, we are working directly with childcare. Childcare do these visits in the houses, and we work together to support this mother or these parents and the child, and this is very important. And just to end, I will say that also another part that is very important in this integrated strategy is that we have this decriminalization of drug use, of drug use. So when we have a problem, when we have a person that are experiencing homeless and also have a problem of drug use, we in our mindset, this is a problem of public health, so we will deal with it as a problem of health, and we will bring together all the stakeholders, including these stakeholders that are related with the social determinants of health. So housing is one of them.
It's interesting. You make it sound like it works, which makes me feel a little bit jealous. I could move to Portugal. I could move to Portugal.
With a lot of challenges.
You heard how well I spoke Portuguese earlier. So, Mick, I'm going to ask you, you're at the front line of this, like many people in the room, actually, in lots of different ways. So I want to go to the audience, but can you tell me, what's the biggest barrier in our current system that prevents us, from being able to respond better at the crisis point to prevent homelessness? It's hard to choose one thing if it has to be two or three. Well, what's the one thing that you wish we could shift that would make it easier for the Passage and others to prevent homelessness at the point of crisis?
I think there's a couple of things. Having a clear, unified plan, which sounds the most obvious thing, but there isn't. That everybody is signed up to. Having that multi-agency approach. We do a lot of work around the links between homelessness and human trafficking. And every time we take a multi-agency approach, it works. So, and it's been touched on earlier in terms of that, this isn't just a housing issue. So having the key players around health, etc., not just housing, is important. And I guess the final thing I'd say is about prevention. This is going to be the most cynical I'm going to sound, but I think the reason a lot of the times that prevention isn't really taken seriously is that kind of... I'm going to invest $1 billion in this, and I'm not going to even be in power. to actually get the credit for it. And I was just really struck by Enrique's point, and also someone else made a point about how you speak in the right language. So Enrique's point about a seatbelt as opposed to an ambulance, and then translating that into actually the Treasury, how do you save money? Well, I reckon a seatbelt is a lot cheaper than actually the cost of ambulances. And we see ambulances every day of the week in terms of whatever analogy you want to use. And it's trying to make the point that actually genuinely, if you prevent this from happening in the first place, it's not only the right thing to do, the type of thing that if it was our mum, our dad, our son, our daughter, that we would want being happening rather than letting them end up on the streets. But actually it will also save everyone a lot of money.
Yeah, it's so true. We did a hostels report last year or earlier this year, might have been last year, and I think we figured out 28,000 was the cost of a hostel bed a year, and at the same time we're trialling a programme of cash transfers to help people get out of homelessness through giving them unconditional cash. And when you weigh them up just in cold, hard pounds and pence, one is so much cheaper if you can make it work. So yeah, if I might just plug that. So we're a little bit over time, so I'm really sorry, but I can't go to questions, I don't think, for our guests. But can you please thank our guests for being here and for